entertaining to read, but you don't, you maintain a modulated tone. And I wonder if that is a conscious effort or it's basic to your, I sense it's basic to your personality and your voice, to use your term.
Probably. Yeah. I'm going to be strident in my old age.
You're suddenly going to get strident.
When I get old, I shall wear purple and shrill and become shrill. No, I think that if in fact you see the world as a somewhat more complicated place, it would be phony to simplify it, to oversimplify it, and just write from one direction. I also think it's important in this climate that is so polarized, where we have red and blue states, red and blue columnists, red and blue cable shows, pundits, that I also think it's important to tip your hat to the other side, to make people know that you understand the disagreement, even if you continue to disagree.
Yeah.
Because then a lot of people will say, you know, I read your column even though I disagree with you.
Which is, in a way, a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're trying to keep a discussion alive and keep people together rather than apart.
Well, in Paper Trail, you write about interesting essays on both Hillary Clinton and on Laura Bush, two very different personalities. And I wonder if you would just give us your take on both of those. Both seem to me modulated views, again. Can you summarize?
Well, I wrote, interestingly, about Hillary Clinton 3 times.
That's true. There was a lot to say.
Hillary as 2 for the price of 1 partner. Hillary as wronged wife. Hillary as senator. Now imagine how fast social change has happened. Imagine that as an arc. I mean, that was only within, what, 10 years, 8 years. And I wrote a column asking Laura Bush, after 9/11, basically saying, you know, this would be a time and for a role of hers to help us rebuild community. And quite frankly, that didn't happen. I mean, heavens, she must not have read, because clearly she would have read your column. So I did, I think that she probably resents being pegged as a traditional wife, first lady, and probably there isn't any such thing anymore. And she certainly wouldn't have liked being cast in opposition to Hillary Clinton in that sense. But Hillary Clinton was much more of a Rorschach test for American women during that era, because she's also been a lightning rod, and she is still also the most, she has more star power than any other female politician on the scene.
I would agree with you there. Well, speaking of star power, I guess it was too late for your book, but I imagine you would have included a Martha Stewart column or 2 or 3. What do you think, again, I guess, given your feminist background and your whole understanding of the political situation in which women come into public view, what's your feeling about the Martha Stewart case, in a nutshell, if you can?
Well, I think she'd done it.
She'd done it, yes.
You know, but, and what did she do? She lied about something which if she hadn't lied about it wouldn't have been a crime.
Right.
Which doesn't seem to me a horrible crime. We did get a look at the inner circle of how these things work, and whether it's Scalia going duck hunting with Dick Cheney, you know, a little too close for comfort, or a wealthy woman and her a wealthy person and her stockbroker. So we did get a look at that. At the same time, nobody lost a job because of Martha Stewart.
Right.
She's no Kenneth Lay.
Right.
You know, and I do not think they would have pursued it with this much energy and so forth if she weren't Martha Stewart. So I hope she doesn't go to jail, even though it looks like she's gonna.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. She's my daughter's idol, I have to tell you, which I think is amusing. Yeah. She said, my daughter feels she has many of the same qualities, so when she sees Martha Stewart scapegoated, as she puts it, she gets upset. So,
yes, yeah. and there is, of course, a history of not only women getting scapegoated, but there's a history of women making a profession out of homemaking.
Right.
You know, from Catherine Beecher on up
Yeah.
through women's history, and she had an interesting role in that time. Aside from the perfectionist streak and the I'm going to make an entire house with lollipop sticks kind of thing,
Right,
which
right,
you always want.
right. For me, it was wonderful to watch her shows. I never wanted to do anything that she showed, but I could watch them on television.
Right, I think that was
Yeah.
true for most women.
Yeah. It was just
Vicarious housekeeping,
yes,
homemaking.
just watch it, then you don't have to do it. What do you make of this new trend in reality TV? I mean, that seems to be something that you would probably have an opinion on. Do you approve of any of it? Do you think in any way it might be a healthy trend, or do you see it as a reflection of something that's perhaps not so well in our culture?
Well, I have a couple of columns in the book around reality program, and it's simply not real. It's the realitying, if that's a verb, which it isn't. It's a phony kind of reality that you're taking these people who are now competing for husbands or competing for jobs now, and we think we're getting a look at real life, and of course it isn't.
Right.
So there's something profoundly phony.
And of course, though, it's conditioning people into thinking or expecting certain sorts of things about reality as a result. So in that sense, it could enter into reality.
It can. I mean, if you
In
actually think you
insidious
have,
ways.
if you actually think you'd be trying out for a job, and Donald Trump would be sitting there saying, "You're fired," you know, it's turning everything into entertainment, whether it's relationships, the search for love, or the
Right.
search for a job. Yeah.
What about the makeover business? That whole notion of finding these women, it sort of reminds me of Queen for a Day in the old days, but taking women who are unhappy and then transforming them physically with the notion that this will somehow solve some of their problems. How does that fit with our notion of the feminist movement?
I would love to return to those extreme makeover people a year later, 2 years later, and see where they are. I'm not totally philosophically opposed to plastic surgery, but I am uncomfortable with it. I wrote a column in Paper Trail on Botox in which I frowned on Botox, and
Because you can frown.
actually I was one of the few people who could, since I hadn't used Botox.
Yes.
So it's not, I mean, I do think that, where do you draw the line between coloring your hair and straightening your teeth and straightening your nose, but there still is something it's both really American. You have a second chance, all you need is new set of, a new jawline.
And you can start again.
And you can start again. And it's also sadly focused on appearance.
Right.
And
Which is also
the search
American.
for, there are these teenagers now having makeovers to look like stars.
Yeah.
No, what happens when the star is out of favor?
Yeah, and they have the eyebrows plucked a certain way and the tattoos and all that.
No, plastic surgery, too.
And the plastic surgery, yeah. And whether the bosom is large or small, I guess depends on what the cultural trend is.
But
too.
they're also young boys having them. Teenage boys to look like Justin Timberlake or
Isn't
whoever.
that amazing? Yeah, no, that is sad. Your book also contains testimonials to people that you admired a great deal. Ann Landers, Katharine Graham, others that were important to you, both as role models and as people that you think were important social figures. Who do you miss most in that gallery of people who you admired?
Well, the person I miss most is the person I wrote about, who was my editor, Tom Winship. So in a personal way, I miss him the most because I loved him the most, personally. One of the other people in that list, you were talking before about the newspaper pages, and one of the other people on that list was Irma Bombeck.
What a wonderful writer. Yeah.
I just have a personal story, because when my first book came out, my first collection of columns came out, a reviewer said Ellen Goodman is the thinking woman's Irma Bombeck. And I said, oh, no. So I wrote a letter to Irma Bombeck, who I had met, and said, no, I'm not the thinking woman's Irma Bombeck. You are the thinking woman's Irma Bombeck. Because it was so It was a horrible thing to say. Like she was.
And she was a thinking woman.
So she sent me back a letter, endearingly, say, "Don't worry. When my first book came out, it was emblazoned on the bottom was Jean Kerr, look to your daisies." Jean Kerr having been an earlier sort of homemaking kind of writer. And she said she had sent a letter to Jean Kerr saying, "Oh, no, no," and Jean Kerr had never answered her. So together we kind of fantasized this long line of women connected back to each other until someone had called Jane Austen the thinking woman's Mary Wollstonecraft or something.
I love it.
So it was all to use your character.
Yes, Jane Austen being a favorite of mine. No, that's very good. So who do you think will be writing you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you have a successor. I'm thinking.
Well, I'm sure you don't have a successor. I'm sure there are a lot of women out there developing their own voice who will be wonderful additions to the whole public debate.
Right, and I think it is wonderful that these sorts of public-private columns are now on the op-ed page for good.
Yeah.
And that really is a relatively
Never
recent...
say for good.
No. That's a sad commentary if we have to say it's not for good. In any case, I want to thank you very much for being with us at the Drexel interview.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. I hope you'll be with us next time at the Drexel interview.